Margaret Tlaib, CNN political analyst and senior White House correspondent for Bloomberg News with us now, as well as Shan Wu, CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor. So good to have you both here. So, Margaret, I wanted to ask you, why have they not been submitted yet?
Well, the lawyers and the president have spent a considerable amount of time and effort trying to figure out both how to answer questions and which questions to answer. The broad expectation now is that it's going to be next week before these questions are submitted, and we expect them to fall in the area of collusion. It's not a really legal term of art, but we all know in general what that's getting to. The president and his legal team have indicated that they had no intention of answering, even in writing, these other questions about the areas, the sort of broader issue of obstruction. So we expect that a lot of what's taken so long is just going over and over the details in case to make sure that the president's responses are going to be consistent and hold up.
So, Shan, you heard the president there saying he crafted these questions himself. He wrote them himself. Surely, you're laughing, surely a legal team is not going to just give him carte blanche to do this.
Absolutely. That's completely the opposite, I'm sure, of what happened. Judging from the president's tweeting style, if I was his lawyer, I would never let him put pen to paper. In fact, I think probably the legal team has written every single word of those answers, and probably a lot of the time is spent forcing the president to digest the words and getting his buy-in to it, because ultimately he has to adopt whatever language the lawyers come up with. And certainly, you know, as was just pointed out, I mean, a lot of the issues with regarding what's off limits and what is not off limits, this is really just the opening salvo. I mean, once they put those forward, Mueller's team may have objections to what they're saying are off limits. They could accept them. There could be further litigation. But the idea that he has written this all himself is just completely silly.
You know, Margaret, the president tweeted on Thursday, the inner workings of the Mueller investigation are a total mess. How would he know what the inner workings of the investigation are? I mean, surely some of the questions he answered might give him some sort of insight?
Well, and his lawyers and Mueller's team are in contact, as are the lawyers in the White House. But, you know, the president has to think not only about himself and not only about, you know, people who advised his campaign, but there are several members of his inner circle and even his family, including his son, Don Jr., who have been brought into this and have been sort of in theory, in the potential crosshairs of Mr. Mueller and his team for several months. So some of his frustrations and concerns may involve what the implications on his family are going to be. And we've seen him in the sort of the public and Twitter setting veer between saying everything's fine, I'm going to answer everything, to being outraged at Mr. Mueller, and even just in the last few days, the same sort of thing, everything will be fine, it's a total mess. So, you know, the president's under a tremendous amount of pressure, and he's had the break of the campaign, those closing weeks of the campaign, the rallies, for several weeks, and Mr. Mueller and his team doing the traditional thing where you put any sort of public notice of an investigation on hold. That's over now, and we're in the closing weeks of Republican power in the House, the takeover by the Democrats. So the president's feeling a lot of pressure, and this has come back into full force.
There's been talk about James Comey and his role here, and he tweeted this week, he said, House Republicans can ask me anything they want, but I want the American people to watch. So let's have a public hearing. Truth is best served by transparency. Let me know when is convenient. Shan, should the president release answers publicly in the art of transparency, and how likely is it that there would be a public hearing?
I think it would be great if he released them. I think his legal team is probably breaking out in sweats at your suggestion of that, and we might see him start tweeting out his answers. But I think transparency would be great. If he were to put out his answers, then he could say that no one can spin or try and mischaracterize them. And that's the same technique that Comey is using, really. It's very smart to say, I want to testify publicly, because then everyone can see what the answers were and no one else can try and distort what actually happened. But I think that'd be great if he put them out publicly. I don't know that either the prosecution or his defense team would like that very much, but would be great for the American public.
Margaret, real quickly, wanted to bring up Maria Butina, the Russian woman who's charged with conspiracy, allegedly using NRA to infiltrate the U.S. on behalf of the Russian government. Her attorneys have been meeting with federal prosecutors, we understand, to craft a potential plea deal. Let's listen to Senator Ron Wyden, what he had to say about that.
She was a college student. She went and set up a shell company in South Dakota. You don't have very many college students set up shell companies in South Dakota with NRA operatives for innocent purposes.
Margaret, how does Maria Butina fit into all of this?
Well, there's the legal question, and that will play out probably much more discreetly in the coming weeks. But I think as the senator's comments reflect, you're going to see a whole new sort of change of pace and process and focus on the Hill starting in a little bit more than a month, particularly on the House side. But that's part of the reason why you see the renewed focus on Mr. Comey and Ms. Lynch in the sort of closing weeks is Republican leadership and the president's allies would like to be able to help turn the focus back to Democrats or to former FBI officials. The Democrats would like to be able to turn the focus toward not just the president, but broadly his team, the 2016 campaign, what happened in terms of connections with Russians. And I think we are certain, if not in the legal track, on the political track, to see some of these figures from months or more than a year ago come back into play.
All righty. Margaret Talev and Shan Wu, we appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you.